focus areas have These three areas have helped us guide our strategic plan forward and will continue to guide us through the 2027. A little bit about One Roof, our national initiative that brings together housing and child welfare partners to strengthen families and youth. On this call, you'll hear from a group of people that work in this space and know what it takes to build a safe and stable homes with nurturing environments and support, and that leads us towards healthy and thriving families ready to learn and fulfill their potentials. If you're joining us today, you're joining our peer learning series. Overall, this is our fourth call. It's a series of moderated discussions among peers that support child welfare and housing agencies to maximize access to and the utilization of housing vouchers. Their primary goals include advancing equitable and thriving outcomes for families and young adults, support family preservation, reunification, and young adult transitions. These are usually held the first Monday of every other month, starting from February to this one's now August, and our next one will be in October. For today's objectives on exploring the potential of public housing agencies, we want to focus on sharing information on PHAs, how jurisdictions are cultivating and maintaining PHA relationships and partnerships to access and fully utilize family and youth housing vouchers. We want to provide some time for participants to share common or unique barriers and successes, as well as their experiences in partnerships, and then share information on possible solutions or tools. A quick agenda for today. So today we're going to be going through our welcome intros, which is right now. Then we'll move into spotlighting our topic. We'll do a couple of breakout rooms based on specific topics, and then we'll come back into a larger group discussion before we close out and just do a couple of next steps. So for just a quick, who's in the room with us, we want to do a quick poll. And what we want to know is, what sector are you representing? Child welfare, this could include public child welfare agencies, the legal judicial system, housing agency, supported services provider. If you're a researcher or you do any policy work, that's really helpful for us to know. If you're in the education, still learning through this, homeless response system, the Family Resource Center, and then other, if there's an other, can you drop that in the chat so that we know what other stands for? And I'll give you guys a minute just to see. Oh yes, some government agency people as other. Love that. Lots of family strengthening. Love that. Awesome. If we can end our poll and share the results. So about a quarter of you are from the child welfare, a quarter from housing, and the rest are a mix of everybody else. We're glad to have you here. We hope that this discussion with all of you and the good mix of people can really drive forward some successes, challenges, solutions, etc. Please continue to use the chat, utilize it to talk to each other. And with that, I'll hand it over to our presenters for today.
Great, thank you, Laura. I'm Andrew Johnson with CSH, and I'm glad to be joining with you today. Myself and Leah Lindstrom-Ray will be kind of helping lead us through much of our conversation today. As Laura mentioned, we'll be having some significant time for some breakout group discussions and some large group discussions, so that peer learning that hopefully you all are here for really can occur effectively. And I think it's really great to see the blend of folks. As Laura mentioned as well, this is a series of peer learning calls, really building from some publications that we released in partnership with KC Family Programs last year, focused on family and youth housing vouchers. We also had a couple of webinars on the topics. And if you haven't referenced those already, I know we'll be sharing after and probably can make those, the publications and such available in the chat throughout today as well. But just know that these are themes that we're diving deeper into that have really come up. So hopefully you'll be seeing opportunities to be able to contribute to the conversation with things that you have learned or are learning, depending on what seat you're sitting in or which role or sector you're a part of. And hopefully you'll also be learning from and with others. So certainly we're talking today about public housing authorities or public housing agencies and the role of public housing agencies. And if you're, I think almost 30% of you are representing housing agencies of some sort. And so I'm hoping that those of you from the sector can really think about both what you can share with your colleagues that are not working in public housing authorities and also what you can learn. Some of you may not already be operating family and youth housing vouchers like the family unification or foster youth independence. Some of you may just be getting started and some of you may have long-standing experience. If you're from a public child welfare agency, again, you may be at any of those points in time and maybe trying to figure out how to engage with your partners, whether it's with your partners at the housing authority, or you may already have a strong partnership, but there's real, opportunities to continuously improve, to think about or rethink, how are the experiences of the families and youth really playing out? Are they, if you're from a housing agency, maybe you don't have the full breadth and depth of understanding of child welfare or the homelessness response system or some of the other partners on the services side. And so how can the different partners come together in a way that might lead to even stronger outcomes and the ability to access vouchers? So we've heard a lot of different interests, questions, requests that have come in. And they're in that vein of, everything from I'm a public housing authority and I am trying to figure out how to engage my public child welfare agency so we can explore utilizing the vouchers, or I'm in a child welfare agency or continuum of care and I want to figure out how do I engage with the housing authority and help them see the opportunity in this, or how do we start building, and again, all other points along the way. So how can we expand or improve? But there's common challenges that we hear, even though each jurisdiction, each state, each county is different. And so hopefully, through some of the sharing and learning, you'll have opportunities together to kind of flesh some of that out as well. And so I think just quickly wanted to remind everyone, that the primary housing resources at the federal level that are specifically set aside for or accessible specifically for the populations impacted by child welfare are the Family Unification Program, and then more recently the Foster Youth Independence. And so just as a quick level setting, this is a part of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and these are special purpose housing choice vouchers. Also, housing choice vouchers are often called Section 8, you may, if you're not as familiar, and they're administered by public housing authorities. And of course, there are thousands of public housing authorities across the country that access these. And the housing resources family unification program can be used for non-time limited rental assistance for families with children who have involvement with the child welfare system, and the role of the housing and often with services is to really try to prevent families from being separated and instead getting them shored up with housing and the services and support so that they can stay together and move to a place where child welfare case can be closed and they can continue to move forward with that stability and foundation of housing. Also, if families have been separated, housing can provide a real foundation for families to be able to engage in the services and to begin the potential of reunification, and then to reunify and again, the idea to be to remain whole. And then for young people, youth vouchers, and more recently, one of the mechanisms for funding and accessing those is called foster youth independence. But these are time-limited subsidies for young people exiting or who have exited the child welfare system. They're typically limited to 36 months. However, there have been some more recent changes that with public housing authorities, family self-sufficiency program participation, or other similar programs and some other criteria, there is the potential for a lot of the young people to have up to 60 months of assistance, which can really be beneficial for young people that are on that pathway through emerging adulthood. So I think from here we can just quickly look at on the next slide some of the partnership roles. We're not going to go through these in depth. You can look at the briefs and the webinars we've done before, but just as a reminder, there are different partners, not just the public housing authorities or agencies and the child welfare agencies. There are certainly roles for other community partners, for the homelessness continuum of care, partnering with parents and young people with lived experience. But two of the key roles that are required by HUD include child welfare agencies having partnerships with the public child welfare agency. And there's some of the role differentiation listed on the screen that you can see. And I think each are responsible for either doing the things that are listed or ensuring that they have partnerships in place so that those things are taken care of. I think on the next slide, let's just quickly touch on funding. And so HUD awards housing vouchers to public housing authorities. And there are, I think, around 2,100 or so housing authorities across the country that administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And only I forget how hundreds of those have FUP and or FYI funding at this point in time. So there's real opportunities for additional housing authorities over time to kind of partner and really create more opportunities across the country for both families and young people. Many of the awards have been made just quickly through competitive processes, notices of funding availability that HUD issues, and then before the application is put in, there has to be a memorandum of understanding and partnership between the Child Welfare Agency and the Housing Authority, as well as potentially other partners, and then the Housing Authority applies for funding. However, with foster youth independence, there's also the opportunity for some vouchers to be able to be accessed through on demand or kind of a rolling process. And I know we have other folks who can probably mention that as we go through some of the examples. And then the Housing Authority administers the rental subsidy process to the payments to the landlords. And again, I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but we can kind of move to the next slide. I just wanted to mention, so I think there's so many things that we hear come up where there are common misunderstandings or kind of things that have kind of passed down or are based on prior policy or law before things have changed. So I'm not going to go through these in depth, but I think there's a couple of common myths that we see on the screen here. And I would just say, I think the bottom line is really important that the partnerships between the Child Welfare Agency and the Housing Authority are well established, and that there's that opportunity to really understand how each other's systems work, and that there's a real opportunity to identify housing needs as early as possible and start working towards being able to make referrals to vouchers, even if it's not quite at the time where the referral can formally be made yet. So that would be kind of the crux of the issue there. On the next slide, another common misunderstanding that we see is that, excuse me, for families with children, which could be, it could be young people with a FYI assistance, but it could also be families with children. When children are placed into foster care or out of home placement, they are still to be considered a part of the household by the housing authority, as long as the child welfare agency is still working towards reunification. Reunification is still one of the goals. And I think, this is a longstanding part of federal law and something that often gets misunderstood, largely because housing authorities work really hard on very limited budgets to not overhouse families. In other words, to not have families in larger units than they qualify for. However, because of how child welfare works, if there's still active reunification efforts and a family gets moved to a smaller unit size or smaller assistance, that then can impede their ability to reunify or even to start trial home visits and such. So the law was changed a while back, but it often gets misunderstood. It's the role of the child welfare agency to alert the public housing authority that reunification efforts are continuing, and any case, public housing authorities shouldn't and probably wouldn't want any sort of protected case details in the file, and that should suffice. So that's something we hear all the time that can get in the way of the actual intention of some of these programs. So just wanted to highlight that one as well. There's so many more that we could go through, but we're not going to right now, but hopefully they'll come up through our discussion today. I think, one thing, there's a lot of, I think, differences between child welfare and housing authorities. Housing authorities are often units of, they might be the city housing authority or a county, a regional or state. There can be overlapping jurisdictions. HUD has direct relationships with housing authorities. That can be confusing, whereas child welfare agencies are either state administered and have direct relationship with the federal government, or there may be a state agency, and then each county also has a local child welfare department that works kind of with oversight from the state. And so the jurisdictions aren't always fully aligned. And so again, some of that can be something to really work out together. But I think ultimately there's a lot of opportunity. We're going to move to some other folks now, but there's a lot of opportunity to really learn from and with each other and kind of think about where are those common interests, and also what are kind of some of the unique tension points and mandates that the different entities have that can be navigated through to really leverage the housing assistance and the services that families and young people need. So with that, let's move to, I'd like to introduce Malik Rivers. If you were a part of the webinars that we did last year, you may remember Malik as one of the presenters. Malik's going to go through a little bit of data, especially around some of the youth vouchers. I think it's really critically important to understand the data and think about need and utilization. So with that, Malik from the National Alliance to End Homelessness.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone here. My name is Malik Rivers. I am the project associate for the Center for Capacity Building here at the National Alliance to End Homelessness. We can go ahead, jump to the next slide, please. So we know a large number of youth who exit foster care experience homelessness and housing instability. The National Youth and Transition Database from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services provides data for all states and territories on the outcomes of transition age youth preparing to exit and exiting from foster care. States report data on cohorts of youth capturing information at age 17, again at 19, and then finally at 21. This map that you're all seeing right here is from the Alliance, and it shows the prevalence of youth who reported experiencing homelessness at age 19, 2 years after the baseline survey at age 17. It shows very high rates of homelessness across the country. In 20 states and DC, 25% or more of youth reported experiencing homelessness over the prior 2 years. And I know you can't see what the numbers are for each state, but this includes 26% in Texas, 32% in Minnesota, 43% in Idaho, And you can also see this map on our website as well to see what your state's numbers are. Um, and this figure includes youth who exited foster care at age 18 and those who remained in extended foster care past age 18. Um, Looking only at youth who are no longer in foster care at age 19, the rate of homelessness is much higher. For example, in Nevada, 28% of all youth surveyed, including those in extended foster care, reported experiencing homelessness over the last 2 years when they were surveyed at age 19. And then for youth who exited foster care at age 18, the rate was 40%. And similar in Washington State, 20% of youth in extended foster care reported experiencing homelessness over the past 2 years when surveyed. But among those who exited foster care, the rate was 31%. And this figure includes, yes, so we are urging people to examine the data on this map and the data reported by their state child welfare agencies to the National Youth and Transition Database. Next slide, please. Um, so extended foster care can protect youth from homelessness, at least while they remain in the program. However, there is another initiative that could help many communities that they are not taking advantage of. The Foster Youth Independence Voucher Program. It provides dedicated housing vouchers to youth who are or were in foster care and at risk of experiencing homelessness. Public housing agencies that have partnered with their child welfare agencies are eligible to apply for the voucher. The vouchers can be used for up to 5 years, and it is an expectation that child welfare agencies will provide supportive services to youth. The services are voluntary, so even if the youth does not want to participate in those services, they can still receive the voucher. The FYI program has one very distinct feature. So while HUD will occasionally release, like Andrew mentioned earlier, the notice of funding opportunities for communities to competitively apply for FYI vouchers for youth, it is also possible for PHAs to receive up to 50 vouchers yearly to assist youth through a non-competitive process. And through the non-competitive process, smaller communities whose public PHA has a partnership with the Child Welfare Agency to administer the FYI can apply for and receive a voucher for those eligible youth on an as-needed basis. Um, so as youth are identified, PHAs can draw down the vouchers at any time to assist them. And this provides opportunities for youth and communities who may not be situated to compete in the NOFO. Next slide, please. And with this map, the Alliance decided to examine to what extent eligible PHAs are accessing FYI vouchers across the country by examining the FYI awards that we're giving out and contrasting that with PHAs administering vouchers as reported on the Housing Choice Voucher Database. So this map shows us that in only 7 states do a third or more of PHAs the Alliance believes to be eligible are drawing down vouchers on an as-needed basis. So in a quarter of all states, it is that's fewer than 10%. Some specific communities have made great use of FYI, uh, um, but such use is not widespread across the country, across the majority of the states in this country. Even states where where the communities are pulling down vouchers, they're not doing it. They're not pulling them down enough. They can still be pulling down more and providing housing to youth. So we know in the homeless response system, there are likely eligible youth who could be benefiting from these FII vouchers to escape homelessness if their PHA and child welfare agency decided to pursue them. So again, these maps are available on our website, and you can see exactly the percentages for your state. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malik. And yeah, I think it's so important to be really thinking about and understanding, both from a data standpoint, where the opportunity is, what the need looks like, and what's happening to young people when they don't have this assistance with their experiences of homelessness. And I think, obviously we're not going into it today, but also thinking about families with children and kind of where some of the opportunities and are, but also what the impacts are from a data standpoint. All right, well, let's now spotlight a local example. We're really pleased that we are joined today by the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. And so I'd like to invite Dr. Brandon Crow, Director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and Michelle Reed, Manager of the Housing Choice Voucher Program Special Allocations, to share a little bit of their journey with FUP and FYI and kind of the Minneapolis, Minnesota perspective.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Crow, again, from the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. I am the director of the Housing Choice Voucher Program there. And Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning or good afternoon. Good morning. My name is Michelle Reed. I'm the manager of special allocations at the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, charged with having all of our special purpose vouchers, including the FUP and FYI.
Sure. So first, say thank you to CSH for having us on this call, but also for the work in our community. I've been a part of some working groups with CSH, kind of convening county staff and the Housing Authority to discuss ways in which we can collaborate and work more effectively to support families in our community. And I think we maybe say a little bit about what MPHA has in regards to these vouchers that have been mentioned. So we have 100 FUP vouchers, so the family unification vouchers, and we split those between 80% of those serving families, and then 20% of that with youth that are as part of the program. So the FUP youth component of those vouchers. We are at 100% utilization now, we're proud to say, and this is in large part due to our the relationship we have with Hennepin County and the team that we work with to make sure that a steady stream of referrals come in, that the appropriate people are referred, and that we do our best to expedite getting those families through our program, certainly from an eligibility standpoint, get the voucher issued. We actually at MPHA have a housing coordination team that immediately is available for those families that are referred for FUP to be able to get assistance with doing their housing search. And we're proud to say we have a extremely low, certainly in comparison to other housing authorities in the country, voucher expiration rate, less than about 2 a quarter for across our entire voucher allocation of almost 6,500 vouchers. So I'm pleased that that is the way it is, especially given the tight housing market in Minneapolis. We have actually even over issued on our FUP so that we can keep enough families supported and in queue to make sure that we're effectively utilizing the vouchers, because as Andrew had mentioned, HUD does periodically release NOFAs to let you seek additional vouchers, and one of the criteria in it is what your utilization has been, and we want to show that we are beyond fully utilized so that we're able to bring more into the community the next time that NOFA is released. As far as FYI, we are currently, we're on the rolling basis here in Hennepin County. We can request up to 25 vouchers per fiscal year, but that process is onerous. Those who have been involved in it, you have to have identified the individual or family in advance, and that's pre-screened them, and then let HUD know that you have a family identified, and then wait for HUD to respond to say whether or not you're allocated a voucher out of that unit that is set aside for your jurisdiction. It is one of the reasons why we have more recently applied with the county on a permanent allocation of up to 75 FYI vouchers to be brought to our community, and we are still waiting for a response on that. Just to emphasize the relationship, I believe that, I think in great part to the conversations that I've been a party to with CSH and Hennepin County, identifying areas of where we could improve on the way we work together, and how we make the process work for the families that we're serving. We there's a main point of contact that we have with the county that facilitates all the referrals, both for the FUP and the FYI program. And we are the body responsible for, I think, identifying kind of how we're utilizing the vouchers and where it is that we can use data and lived experience feedback in order to make improvements, and have recently developed within our agency a data and research team. And we hope to be able to, we've started conversations with the county to be able to do some analysis and have an ongoing assessment tool to assess our speed of service, certainly the time it's taking for families to move through the program once they are made referred to into the program, but also around issues of racial disparities and disproportionality in the work. In some of the previous sessions, I know that I was looking back at some of the materials, the chart that had been shared to show within each state the prevalence of disproportionality in the service lines, and we want to be a party to having a significant impact on that for Minnesota. Some of the things that we have learned through this process is that there need to be multiple ways, obviously, to be able to support the family. That FUP somewhat ties your hand, and MPHA is an MTW agency. It's a moving to work agency. It's a special designation for those who don't know what that is. It really has nothing to do with work. It is one of HUD's lovely titles, but we are an original agency that has this authority, and it gives us flexibility to change some of the regulations that we believe need to be adjusted so that we're able to better serve our specific community. However, MTW does not extend to most of the special purpose vouchers. So we are able to look within our agency, though, on other ways in which we could possibly have an impact on families that are child welfare involved, and certainly if they were foster care involved. And so, for one example, is we've done a sponsor-based program, and that's our version of a kind of quasi PBV, project-based voucher. It's not tied to a specific unit. It's a set of subsidies that we'll provide to a service provider. So it's a service-rich environment that is also providing housing to a subset of the population, and in this case, to youth that have aged out of foster care, as well as youth that have aged out of foster care and have a child or are expecting a child. And so we're able to, with that program, support another 52 households that have come through the program with a flat subsidy that we provide, and that if it's beyond what's needed by the agency to provide the housing, they can also use it for their service cost. So the family gets supported and hopefully able to move to self-sufficiency. The other thing we've done with our status to help families, and we have a number of the families that are involved in this particular program that have child welfare involvement. It's called our Stable Home, Stable Schools program. We work with the elementary schools in the city of Minneapolis, and for the 24 schools that have the highest incidence of homelessness amongst their youth, we have a housing assistance program where we'll work with the families that are referred to that program for up to 3 years, sometimes a little bit more, where they get full rental assistance and wraparound services so that we're able to help the family stabilize in a housing unit, and so that the child can complete their education and hopefully end the cycle of poverty. That program also has a housing stability component. So all the elementary schools in the city of Minneapolis are able to refer families that are housed but could become unstably housed and lose their housing and need a financial assistance and some case management support for up to 24 months. Now that we have a new grant from the county to be able to support those families, and so the children can stay in school. And we know how much of that gets tied into families that end up having a child welfare involvement. And so, but it's another way in which we have tried to find a path to being able to support families in our community. What we want to do in the future, to share a little bit on it, is again, the furthering our work on equity assessments. We know that's an important part. It's one of the things that we've built into our Stable Home, Stable Schools program, and we want to do that across all of our specialized vouchers, where there are systems that are making determinations on who's referred, and not to kind of point a finger at someone, but there are a number of things that systems sometimes miss that the data really can help highlight, so that you can reevaluate the way you do the work. As was mentioned earlier by Andrew, there are to get those vouchers when you apply for these NOFAs, having programs like an FSS program can actually go a long way in getting you points to be deemed as more eligible and likely to get an award, an extra allocation. It is not a program that we've had that's been active at MPHA, but we are actually looking to use our MTW authority to do a new version of an FSS that is a little less restrictive and becomes an on-ramp for families to become homeowners or to pursue additional education, but it would be something that we'd be able to provide to families that are involved with FUP and FYI. There's also something that's happened in Minnesota. It's a wonderful thing. For those housing authorities out there, you know that sometimes extra money doesn't always mean easy. But the state and last year made a massive investment in kind of affordable housing. And there's going to be a new state voucher that will be administered, and the MHA, the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, is still working through the guidelines on this program, but PHAs will be able to get a new allocation of vouchers well beyond what HUD has been able to give to housing authorities in decades, but we'll be able to help much larger number of families than we are able to now. And one of the things that we're examining in it is, once we are clear about what the state will allow us to do with the funds, we believe we're going to have the flexibility to be able to create specialized programs where we can add to our FUP count without it being a federally funded FUP, but it'll be a state funded FUP type voucher. And same thing for foster youth independence, as well as programs that we may be able to work with the county in identifying families that have special needs that we currently aren't able to access because of our limited voucher allocation as a whole. So number of fun, exciting things for those of us that get jazzed about it in the PHA land, but just a little bit about MPHA. So, but we're looking forward to the conversations that we can have in the breakout groups.
Great. Yes. So grateful that you all have joined today. And so Brandon and Michelle, and I know Leslie and possibly others from Hennepin County, your partners at Child Welfare, are also going to be in the breakout rooms. So certainly as you all are thinking about some of the questions, some of the examples of the Minneapolis journey, some of it may resonate for you with your own, or there may be some ideas there, to kind of really think about how you can really build over time or maximize some of the things that housing authorities may be able to do. So before we transition to breakouts, I'd like to invite our partners as a part of our National One Roof Initiative. One of our partners is the Council for Large Public Housing Authorities, and I believe we have Abra Lyons-Warren, the Director of Cross-Sector Initiatives with the Council, with us today. And Abra, I'd love to just give you a few minutes. You have that national lens and working with so many housing authorities across the country around this. If you want to just add a little bit more, some thoughts or context before we move into breakouts. Abra?
Sure. Thank you so much, Andrew. And apologies, I was not able to be on earlier. It has been an unexpectedly busy summer for us. So I'll just keep things sort of very general, since I wasn't able to be a part of what you've already discussed. But I think, broadly, for those who are unfamiliar, we have an initiative. So the Council of Large Public Housing Authorities is a member organization of large public housing authorities. And we, for the past decade, have been refining an initiative called Housing Is, which is this idea that housing is that critical stability that individuals and families need, but it's not fully sufficient if we want to improve life outcomes. So child welfare is certainly an area where we think there's very important intersections. You all, and we'll get into this more in the breakout sessions around some specifics that already exist, like FYI and FUP. But I think really from my perspective, the other thing to really think about, and I'm sure was highlighted in the examples shared before, thank you so much, Andrew, is around partnerships, right? So we're not expecting housing organizations to become experts in other areas, but drawing from those who are in other fields and forming those partnerships, which I'm happy to talk more about for folks who are interested. But really doing that so you can share each other's expertise. Nobody has enough funding, nobody has enough time. And doing that, we can be more successful with those joint goals. I think especially when we're talking about the younger population, right? 0 to 3, 0 to 5. I think the research is pretty clear, both on the really extreme possible long-term impacts for that population, lifelong impacts, but also the cost benefit of doing those earlier interventions. So, of course, keeping families together. Housing should not be a reason that families cannot stay together, and giving them the resources that they need to be successful with that. But I think also looking at kind of what are the root causes that can be addressed before it even gets to that crisis moment of housing instability and experiencing homelessness. So I'll stop there, but happy to answer any questions and look forward to speaking with those in my smaller breakout group.
Great. Thank you so much, Abra. Thank you to all the panelists that we've heard from. And I'll turn it over to Leah Lindstrom-Ray from CSH now to kind of move us towards our breakout discussion.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, guys. I think we have a lot of ideas and examples to work with. And we wanted to provide a chance for folks to go into smaller group conversations. We are suggesting that we divide ourselves up in groups. So let me share the screen again, and you guys can see our groups. And what we're going to do, you're going to be able to choose what kind of conversation you want to have. So you'll be able to self-select into group 1 if you want to talk about voucher access and navigation assistance. 2, if you want to talk about challenging histories and backgrounds, and really thinking about what the child welfare side and the public housing side can do together to address those barriers or histories. And then if you want to dig deeper into what partnerships look like with the PHA. And we've asked folks to go into certain groups. So for kind of our speakers, Malik, Abra, Brandon, and Michelle, we've asked you to go into certain groups. So I think you will be put in there. If not, please add yourself. And then Kathy, if you could launch the options. So you click on your name and then choose which group, and then you scroll down and you choose which group you want to go in. Hopefully let us know if you have any questions.
And we'll be in groups for how long, Leah?
I think we have approximately 20 minutes altogether. Let me stop. Let me tell you a little bit more about what you're going to do in those groups. So we've got a handful of questions that will help kind of get the conversation going. But when you go in, if you could just take a few minutes and share your name, your location, where you work and what your role is there and your pronouns. And there'll be someone in there to help you get the conversation going. Okay, I think we should be back from our breakout, our small groups. So we wanted to take the next little bit of time for folks to...
Leah, sorry.
Yep.
We got a couple more folks in the partnership.
Okay, sorry, I can't see everything.
No, it's okay. It's
Thanks for the heads up.
in 3, 2, 1. And give us a thumbs up if you're all here. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate all of the conversations, and we've got an opportunity now to hear from one another. And this is really so there were 3 different topics. So hopefully we can hear maybe 1 or 2 highlights from each of the small group discussions. And then 2, if there's any strategies you heard or things that you have tried or are getting ready to try. When it comes to these partnerships and really kind of optimizing what the housing authority's role is in FUP and FYI. So I want to just open it up and you can bring yourself off mute or you can add in the chat if you want to. Love to hear one or two highlights from each of the sessions. And how about I was in group 1, so I'm going to let us wait. And let's go 3, 2, 1. And so if someone from the third group would like to share a little bit about your conversation. So that was around partnerships with PHAs, maybe effective partnership or strategies to establish those partnerships. What were some highlights?
Hey folks, I can jump in. My name is Amy Sutzla. I work for CSH, and then others from the group, please jump in. Something that was brought up right away is just really getting on the same page with definitional differences in language, right? Lots of times we're using the same words, but they mean very different things in two different sectors. So really talking about what those definitional differences are, maybe doing like a pretty basic, here's child welfare 101, this is how our system works. Here's housing 101, here's how our system works. So we understand all of the different moving parts and moving pieces that we're all trying to bring together as we do this partnership. Folks also mentioned, utilizing MOUs or some kind of basic data sharing agreements that has been helpful, that could be helpful. And then we got into, at the end, a really good conversation around just some nuance around FYI vouchers. And so what else am I missing, group members? Anything else you want to add?
Got it. You're getting a thumbs up. So yeah, you can also, everyone should be able to take themselves off mute if you feel like jumping in. Great. Okay, so feel free to jump in if you've anything else that sticks out for you about creating those partnerships. The other topic was around challenging histories and backgrounds. So what were some of the highlights from that conversation?
I'm willing to start. Andrew Johnson with CSH again, but certainly others that were in the room, feel free to chime in as well. We talked a little bit about just some of the challenges that our folks are commonly encountering with especially families that they're working with, everything from just rents not matching incomes with the housing voucher payment standards, or like the allowable rents not matching what the rents actually are going for, or the units aren't meeting like the criteria as far as what's safe. Landlords that don't want to accept for all kinds, housing assistance for a variety of reasons, including sometimes either their own past experiences with rental subsidies or just stories they hear about families or youth. Eviction histories, if somebody's been evicted, especially from federally assisted housing, lack of capacity of service providers, et cetera. So some of the things that came up as far as some opportunities or strategies included partnering, and so really maybe assessing like a landscape analysis of and really partnering to figure out which puzzle pieces the different folks hold, different funding streams, different agencies and their roles, even in housing. There are things that housing authorities operate, federal programs that they may have, but there are maybe other things that housing finance agencies or community development agencies or community-based organizations hold, and like how those pieces might work together, setting thresholds to the HUD minimum, and then also thinking about how to support families when they've had challenging backgrounds, but maybe the circumstances have shifted. Maybe there's been treatment they've received, or a partner that used to be in the household is no longer in the household, and the role that supports are playing. And so, being able to appeal decisions, denials maybe that are made by housing authority, and understand what and how to do that with the housing authority, and also helping with housing resumes and supports. landlord mitigation funds or incentives as well, and landlord engagement events to maybe help counter some of the narratives. So those are some of the things that came up, but I don't know if others that were in the group had additional takeaways or thoughts. Great, thanks, Jason. Yeah, it was a good discussion.
Good, okay. So then we can go to group one. And okay, folks, in my group, just because I'm in CSH doesn't mean that I want to report out. So, but we had really good conversation in group one about thinking about the voucher process and kind of how do we improve the voucher process and any housing navigation work. There were some good ideas that had come up, good examples. Does anyone want to share one or two? I see we did lose a couple of people, but I know that there's still some folks in here. And Michelle, do you want to share a little bit about some of the things you talked about? And then maybe that'll spur some other people to.
Yeah, they got some good stuff. One of the things that we had talked about was ensuring that if there are known criminal histories of the participants getting a letter of support from the case manager on the up front, identifying very clearly what participants have done to demonstrate success to overcome their particular barriers. We also at MPHA have educated the case management and the county team on how to read a utility allowance worksheet and determine affordability when that information is provided to the participant. That way they can help support their client in navigating and negotiating rent if it's just outside of affordability for them. The other thing that I think Brendan may have mentioned earlier on, and also just is worth noting here too with everybody, is that MPHA does have a housing coordination team. So when there are new vouchers that are issued, we pair them up with our housing coordinators to assist in locating units that are affordable with landlords that we currently have, that we already work with to, help in the outcomes of stability. So anything
Yeah. Well, Michelle, I was thinking about, you had mentioned specifically around working with youth and FYI, kind of the different ways that you engage them along that path and trying to avoid lease violations or ending the lease. Sounded like you had some cool things.
The other thing that we did on the back end is if there is a non-renewal of lease due to repeated lease violations, we will enter into a settlement agreement with that participant and have a non-disclosure meeting with the participant and their case manager to educate them on, here's where you have, these are the violations that you have. We don't want to terminate your voucher. So we'd like to offer you maybe a rent-wise course, or maybe there's rent payee, but what additional services could be provided to help support that youth in maintaining their independence? And then we would allow them to, once they sign that, it's usually good for a year, the coordinator, the technician works with that participant to get that signed. We have it in the file, and then we're able to issue their voucher for continued assistance.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I wonder if Stacy or Olivia or Malik or Brandon, anything else that came up in our group you'd like to let the other folks know about?
This is Stacy. I think that mine was a little bit more less innovative, more challenging, because it was really dependent on county to county. Even though child welfare is a statewide system, obviously the county, the public housing agencies are very different, and so we have some wonderful relationships that work really well with us, and some that we still need to build up in different ways. And I certainly wish that there was a navigation system here in some of our public housing authorities, because we're really relying on additional funds to do that with our our partners, and we struggle a bit to have enough of that to make this work as effectively as we'd like. So I wish it was more innovative. I hope we get there.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I think we're, Andrew, I'm gonna take your lead on how we want to use the last couple minutes here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there are any other, just even from earlier in the panel, or if there are any other kind of questions or thoughts that folks have while we're together with folks. Anything you heard that you want, a thread you wanted to pull a little bit further. Just give a quick minute for that, just in case.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one. If anyone is here from a state-funded, locally administered state, that would be super helpful. Here in Virginia, we find that the only youth that are being referred to the PHA to get a voucher are the ones that are residing in the same area that they came into foster care for the FYI vouchers. And oftentimes we find that many of them are not wanting to remain in that same area, or they've established roots in another area and they're not able to access the vouchers just because there's 120 local DSS offices. We have 36 PHAs. They only contract with one. So only 36 are able to submit referrals, and only if they're living in that area. So we have a very small number that are able to access these vouchers. Of the 1,600 that probably qualify for them, maybe about 60 are able to access them. So we definitely want to increase our utilization rates here in Virginia. We're just struggling to figure out how to do that without asking the PHAs to contract or get an MOU with 120 localities.
That's a great point. I know we have, certainly Minnesota is a state supervised, county administered state. But I think, even regardless of which structure, there are some bright spots. I don't know. I would even ask Abra if you wanted to, just to put you on the spot if you're still there, if you wanted to mention anything about what we've seen in Washington, just as an example, and then certainly if others want to chime in. But it's a great question, Olivia.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a great answer. But yes, as Andrew mentioned, I mean, we do have some really good work happening in Washington State. The Seattle King County area, the King County Housing Authority has had a lot of success in working effectively with child welfare partners. I can drop my email.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was thinking about the statewide MOU that the state public child welfare agency created with the network of the housing authorities, and it's a state-run system, but they have 6 different regions, and so I was just thinking about that too as something. So we could certainly share more about that. But
yeah, that's a great one, and I mean they've long been some of the folks who spearheaded that have long been champions of this work. So I had dropped a different resource in the chat, which features Michael Mira, the former executive director of the Tacoma Housing Authority, who was really the person leading this MOU effort. We are still working to be able to replicate all the amazing things they've done there in other parts of the country. But I can share my email in the chat as well. I know we're getting short on time. Maybe there's another time that I can talk to folks, arrange time to talk to folks one-on-one.
That'd be great. And CSH is also doing some work with Washington. So yeah, feel free to reach out to Abra, reach out to us. We'd be happy to chat more. That's one good example. I don't know if Minnesota had any, or anybody else had any quick thoughts on the matter before we wrap up. That was a really good question though. Yeah, I think, just there isn't parity as far as every public child welfare agency has the same jurisdiction and kind of relationships as the public housing authority. It's not necessarily a one-to-one, and so it's a complicated kind of matrix of figuring out those connections and the jurisdictions, overlapping jurisdictions, that, and I mean, whether it's state run or county administered child welfare system, there are some counties that have multiple, a good, depending on the size of the county, good multiple public housing authorities just within their county as well. So figuring out ways so the child welfare agency kind of has some common expectations that are negotiated across public housing authorities, helping housing authorities even be able to work with each other too on trying to level out some common, so that the expectations are common, I think is critical. But yeah, more can be shared on that. So, all right, I think we're probably about ready to move to the final section, Leah. Or I guess it would be.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up here. We would love to get your feedback, but I'll turn it over to Laura here.
Hi, everybody. Just a reminder that we do this every other month. And so our next one is up on October 7th, same time. And I will drop the link in the chat so that you can register for that. Share with people that or want to invite to these. Next slide. Here are some resources. The PowerPoint will be available as well as this recording, and we'll send out to everyone who registered for this, so you'll be able to access these resources. And before you go, we would like to launch a little poll just to see how was today. Just 2 brief questions, and let us know your thoughts about today's session. It's really helpful for us. And I think the poll is launching. No. Maybe, let me see. There we go. It's doing it. Oh, that's weird. Give me 1 second.
Let me know if I can do anything on my end, Laura.
There we go. That should be up for people. While you're filling this out, it's really helpful for us just to know if this was effective for you, if you really like this session, what you like, what you disliked. But while you're doing that, on the next slide, we have our CSH Summit, and proposals are being accepted right now. And that's just a reminder, if you have an interesting topic or want to do a case study. A couple people on this call shared some really interesting points around the PHA/child welfare partnership. And if you have something that you're like, oh, this might be something that other people might find interesting, feel free to reach out to myself, Leah, Andrew. We'd love to work with you to be able to put together something. And if anybody has like, oh, I would really like to learn more about this, also feel free to reach out to us with that, because we could put something together for the field. And while you guys are finishing up this evaluation, which thank you again, because this really helps us be like, okay, what could we add more of? What could we take away? I'll just say thank you so much to everyone who joined the call today. Thank you to Malik, to the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority folks, and Abra as well. Thank you, Michelle and Brandon. Thank you so much for just being here with us, talking with us. We know it's like kind of informal conversations, but they're really helpful, I think, when people start to learn and be able to connect and make connections in their work and take back solutions to their work. Thank you everybody who participated. It's really helpful to have a good group of people and have questions and answers and discourse among each other. We hope that these have been helpful for you all, and we'll continue doing these until December. And then lastly, just a huge thank you to everyone. Andrew and Leah, great job. Great job from all our team. But Andrew and Leah really spearheaded this particular session, and we're just so grateful for their knowledge, their insights, and how much they're able to put into this work. And I'll let you guys go with that. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you guys have any questions or anything that you need from us, feel free to reach out. We're so lucky to have you all on this call, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.